Welcome in to the Late Night Gamecocks show. Today is October 22nd, 2025. My name is Matt Anderson. I am the Late Night Gamecock, and joining me, as always, is Alex Jones of thebigspur.com. Alex, how are we doing tonight?
We're here. We're here. It seems like we're starting to enter that kind of crazy part of the season where you got football and basketball going on. Had some basketball stuff last night that I know we're going to get into tonight, but starting into that crazy part of the season. But can't complain. I think we talk about basketball a lot here, and it's coming around, and plus got a lot to talk about with football too.
Yeah, you look at this upcoming weekend, Alex, and South Carolina. For some reason, unbeknownst to me, they didn't call me first before they made this decision. But homecoming this weekend against Alabama. Alabama, arguably the best football program in college football history. We all know what they did pre-Nick Saban, what they've done with Nick Saban, and now with Kalen DeBoer, what they've been able to accomplish this season at least. But it's going to be a big task for the Gamecocks to get a victory. The Alabama Crimson Tide is ranked number 4 in the country. When I looked at that a little bit earlier today, the game will be at 3:30 p.m. on Saturday. And it's homecoming, like I mentioned, and the game will be on ABC. Alex, I don't know if I just like to have torture in my life. I don't know, or maybe my wife likes to torture me. But so Saturday morning, I'm actually running a 5K in Columbia before this game. So at least maybe I'll fall asleep in the stands.
It may be a long day for you with a 5K and then number 4 Alabama coming in here. It could be a long day.
Well, as we know, it doesn't get any easier in the SEC, especially the Gamecocks, as we trek through 3 of the top 8 teams in the country. We'll see where everyone's ranked by the time the Gamecocks play them. But I did look, and as of early this morning, the line was 12.5. Alabama was favored. Over under at 47.5, I believe. And if those lines have changed, I just haven't looked at them in the past 5-6 hours. So, Alex, I'm a little surprised that the implied point score is 30-17 Crimson Tide. I don't think any Gamecock fan with a straight face or Gamecock reporter would say, yep, I think 30-27 is going to be this final score. But Vegas knows stuff.
Yeah, they do. They seem to always know stuff. And, 12.5, I was a little bit surprised. I think it opened up around that, too, and it's kind of stayed pretty consistent. Like, I was thinking it may be a little bit higher than that just because of what Alabama's done offensively compared to what South Carolina's offensively done so far this season. But, we'll see if that line moves. It's been pretty consistent here these past few days. Obviously the availability report comes out tonight. I don't know how much that's going to change just from a South Carolina standpoint, but we'll see. It's interesting that it's at 12.5 right now.
Yeah, and to me, Alex, this feels a lot like that Tennessee game 2 years ago when South Carolina welcomed, I think, number 3 or 4 or 5, whatever it was, Tennessee to Williams-Brice. And that was a night game. Mm-hmm. And Gamecocks did something miraculous that night. I don't know if it's going to happen this weekend, but that's why you play the games. Alex and I will get into that game a little bit later into the show. Last night, Alex covered Garnett and Black Madness. I did a double take when I saw you posting about it, and I was like, oh, net. Like, I guess they're going to be shooting the ball, something like that. But Alex got eyeballs on the men's and women's team, so we'll get a full report from that. And Alex and I are going to talk about the men's and women's teams in more detail tonight. It's basketball season's right around the corner, and there's an exhibition game against NC State in Greensboro this upcoming weekend. So not on TV, but you can listen to Derek Scott call that game on the radio, and I know that I will be tuned into that on Sunday. Alex, Sunday is actually my birthday as well, so I don't think I'm going to get an early birthday present with the Gamecocks against Alabama, but maybe I'll get one on Sunday with a good showing. After that, Justin Lyles from sportscapvalue.com will be on to talk about our best bet segment. He's got a lot to talk about. I was texting with Justin back and forth today. As a Gamecock fan, he is as frustrated as all of you. So make sure you get your comments in here, your questions. We'll try to answer everything we can. And with that, Alex, let's get into the show.
Gonna turn on the late night show. Hear what's going down in Cool Town. I said I'm turning on late night show. Yeah, my Cox will let me down.
Welcome back into the Late Night Gamecocks show. And tonight, Alex and I are going to hit on a lot of basketball. It's something that is near and dear to both of our hearts. We're going to start with the women, Alex. And the women are preseason number 2 in the country, only behind the defending national champion, Connecticut Huskies. Connecticut Huskies look a little bit different this year. Buckers, however you say her name, Paige Beckers, for my money, was the best player I've seen in a very long time, and that includes Caitlin Clark. I think it would have been really fun to have seen Paige and Caitlin and the Gamecock teams go battle the last 4 years, but she battled a lot of injuries as well. She was number 1 pick in the draft, and I thought the thing that made UConn move. So Gamecocks are behind UConn. Funny enough, Alex, for the first time since 2013-2014 women's basketball season, they will not be playing UConn in the regular season. And my question to you, Alex Jones of thebigspur.com, do you think the Gamecocks and the Huskies will play each other this year at some point?
It feels like at some point it's got to. I guess at some point it's going to be the NCAA tournament.
Yeah.
I can easily see that being a Elite Eight matchup, Final Four matchup, maybe a national championship matchup, like depending on how the seeding and all that fills out. But I mean, it feels like they've played. Obviously, they've had the regular season schedule here these past few years, but it feels like they could be on another crash course again this year.
Yeah, that's the one thing that I thought about today when writing some show notes. Is I just said, okay, well, you got Tania Latson, you got Joyce Edwards. I can go through the entire roster. Tessa Johnson. I mean, names that Gamecock fans know. And Joyce Edwards, wow, what she did with the U.S. team over the summer, she just seems like that next women's Gamecock player that is going to get a jersey retired. I'll be honest. We had Aaron Lucas on our show last year, and we talked about Joyce Edwards, and he just said, guys, the sky is the limit for her. Like, the limit is not Asia Wilson, who's the premier women's basketball player in the world. The limit is Joyce Edwards and what she can accomplish. So I'm very excited for her. Like we said, Latson at Florida State last year averaged 25.2 points per game. I don't think that Dawn has ever coached somebody that can fill up the hoop like she can. Latson can score from all 3 levels, especially in transition. And it's going to be, I think, something that, despite all of Dawn's success, has an opportunity to put those women Gamecock basketball players and that entire team in a different stratosphere. That's the one thing they've needed, is a bucket getter in late moments. So, Alex, I know that in 1 minute we got the injury report coming out, so you're going to be busy. But real quick, women's basketball, and then I'll let you go write that article for the Big Spur.
Yeah, you mentioned Ladson. Like, it's going to be really intriguing to see how she fits in. Obviously, has a connection with Raven Johnson, and it's going to be really interesting to watch those two in the backcourt and how they kind of work together. And you mentioned Joyce Edwards, like obviously being really excellent last year for most of that season as a freshman. Now, seeing that year 1 to year 2 jump, that's what's going to be really interesting to see. And especially now that you're going to have to kind of, fill in some of the production for Chloe Kitts, who's going to be out for the year. So, it's going to be interesting to see her and see how Joyce Edwards can take that year 1 to year 2 jump, because it seems like she could be in for a pretty big season.
I agree. And just going through this roster, you got Tania Latson. I think she was a 5-star. Maddie McDaniel, high 4-star. Tessa Johnson, 5-star. Joyce Edwards, 5-star. Medina Ocote, 5-star. Adele Tech, 5-star. Chloe Kitts. Chloe will be back before we know it. It's going to feel like a blur, but she'll be back next year, which actually be really good for this women's team. Then you have McDowell, Raven Johnson, Dowda, and Agat Makir, who I think looked really good last night for the Gamecocks, especially, that women's team. But one of the things I think is interesting, and I'm sure Alex will be back here in a moment and will talk about it with me, but this women's basketball schedule is a little different than what Dawn has done in the past, let's say 10 years. Instead of having a lot of, big marquee neutral court road games against these teams that are the elite of college basketball. You think back to Paris a couple years ago when they played Notre Dame. Now they're really only have a couple of traditional non-conference powers. Southern Cal, who has been one of the top teams in the country, the Gamecocks will face them on a neutral court. And then they'll also face Duke on a neutral court, and then they will host top 20 Louisville. So only 3 of those games in the non-con, as things stand right now, are going to be against opponents that I don't want to say anybody, and that includes UConn, has as much raw talent as Dawn Staley's team does. However, they're going to be tested this year without Chloe Kitts. She's kind of the anchor, the do everything person for this women's basketball program. She has been for the last 3 years. Came in early, was a 5-star player, and just has done everything that Dawn Staley's asked of her. But you move past that, so you say, okay, well, with the SEC this year, how do the Gamecocks fare? Well, you have Texas, you have Oklahoma, you have LSU, you have a lot of these opponents that are also ranked in the top 10. And in the women's sport, especially right now, I think we're seeing more parity. Parity in a lot of ways because of NIL, just the same thing that's happened in football lately and on the men's side with basketball. But a lot of these women's teams are kind of forming, for lack of a better word, a super team. So these transfers are allowing these players to go play together. I think it's really good for the women's game right now. I'm kind of sick of the NBA super teams that we've seen. The WNBA still has a lot of parity to it, and I know that the Las Vegas Aces have been kind of dominating in large part to Asia Wilson. But I like seeing that you have 10 teams in women's college basketball that can all play with each other. That's not something that's been the case. I remember years and years and years ago, maybe not that many years and years, but years ago, where Dawn Staley would take the number 1 women's basketball team in the country on the road or on a neutral court to the number 2, 3, 4 team in the country, and they would win by 30. It's fun for Gamecock fans, but I don't think it's great for women's basketball for a lot of blowouts to be happening if your team is just that much better. So they will be tested this year. There are 3 ranked opponents in the non-con and then 7 in the SEC schedule, and that's just the preseason. We know that SEC women's basketball is arguably the best conference in the country, top to bottom. The SEC seems to be doing that at every sport right now. So I'm not going to really get into the rotation for Dawn Staley or the starting lineup or anything like that, just because I don't think Dawn views it that way. Dawn, most of the time, rolls out 8 to 12 girls, usually whittles that down to 8 or 9 or even 10 by the time the women's basketball tournament starts. So Dawn views all these girls as starters, and really she should, because at the end of the day, all of these girls were McDonald's All-Americans. And you look at this roster right now, and I just like to look at the height. So you go Latson 5'8", McDaniel 5'9", Tessa Johnson 6 foot, Joyce Edwards 6'3", Akot 6'6", Tack 6'5", Chloe Kitts not playing this year 6'2", McDowell 6'1", Raven Johnson 5'9", Dowda 6'4", and McKeer 6'1". I don't know if you walk around town, wherever you live very often, or you go to the grocery store, but there's not a lot of 5'9" women walking around, let alone 6'6". So I think there's a nice mesh. There's a nice mix. And when we think about Gamecocks women's basketball right now, for a lot of fans, it's a national championship or bust. And that's a great place to be. Honestly, it's a great place to be. Is it attainable every single year? Probably not. Since the days of John Wooden on the men's side, we really haven't seen, teams go on 6-7 national championship win runs in a row. But I think the expectation this year should be Final Four. It should be national championship game, and it should be national championship. And look, if you're a Gamecock football fan that's disappointed, you were disappointed last year with the baseball team, the softball team. heck of a run. And they just got the number one player in the country that we talked about a couple of weeks ago. Alex and I did. But you're ready for some good news. So go fill out Colonial Life Arena. Go watch them on their own TV. It's a fun brand of basketball. So I encourage you to do that. Dawn just keeps this program running. I don't see any stop in sight. She got interviewed by the New York Knicks, for crying out loud. So just enjoy having the premier basketball coach in the women's game, because Dawn is still at the top of her coaching level. So excited about that. Now I'm going to go to the men's side. And the men's side, little different story. You're not going to see the men ranked in any national top 25 preseason poll. And heck, when SEC media guys all got together, the national folks, what'd you see them ranked last in the conference? I think that for whatever reason, the Gamecock men's basketball program especially, and you can say to an extent football and even baseball the last couple of years, or baseball might have been right, but they haven't gotten a lot of credit. And this is a year where I think that national media is hard to do. Let me say that first. It is very, very hard to have a pulse on every team in the country, have a feel for the roster, that especially in this transfer portal era. It's hard to know how teams are going to fit together. And, I think that the men's media folks during this era have gotten very lazy. Just be frank and blunt with all of you. It's been lazy. This team is not the worst team in the SEC at all. This men's team's not the worst team in the SEC. But you're coming off a year where I think the Gamecocks won two games against league opponents, and then gave Arkansas a scare in the SEC basketball tournament. But Alex, I'm glad to have you back here. Well, heck, Alex, while it's fresh on your mind, what's the injury report look like?
Yeah, so on two probables are Monkel Goodwine and Nolan Hay. Questionable Jatavius Shivers, and then not surprised based on what Shane Beamer said yesterday, Kason Henry is out.
So no Dylan Stewart, no other key defensive players. Well, that's good.
Which means they should be good to go.
Yeah, they're going to need all of them. But Alex, you missed the women's conversation. I don't know if you want to chime in on anything there, but on the men's side, I was about to go into the rotation, and I'm not gonna predict a starting lineup. I mean, I can tell you that I think that Big Mike, Michi, Elijah Strong, those three guys are probably locked into starting spots as things stand right now. And then you're looking at probably one of Kevin Knox or Miles Studi starting. And then, I don't know, Alex, do you think Jordan Butler or Chris has done enough to get in that starting lineup right now? Or will the Gamecocks go relatively, I guess, small, but these guys are 6'5", 6'7"?
Yeah, if they play four guards, you would think just in your mind it'd be a small lineup, but not with a 6'9" Mike Sharaf jumps in there and Michi Johnson, who's 6'2", 6'3", 6'4". But I agree with you what you said about Sharaf jumps, Michi, and Elijah Strong. Like, that's three that you probably feel pretty good about are going to be in the starting lineup. It's going to be those other two spots that I kind of have a question about. Like, do one of those 7-footers and Kreese Asandiko or Jordan Butler, do they kind of work themselves into that starting spot? We'll see. Like, do they kind of throw in a Miles Studi in there? Like, that's going. He's kind of I think kind of an X factor type of thing for this lineup. Like, is he going to be better coming off the bench where he can give you the 15 to 20 minutes and knock down 2 or 3 threes a game? Like, kind of feels like that could be where his best spot is. Then also, like, another type of X factor I think for this starting lineup is kind of Kobe Knox. Like, I think he's really interesting. I'm intrigued to see him. Like, I really like some of the stuff I've seen from him from his time at South Florida. A guy that's just an older, experienced guy. So, and then you can throw Eli Ellis in there from a potential could he start. But with all this that we're saying, like it seems like it's going to be a pretty deep, potentially could be a pretty deep team. And Lamont Paris said that at SEC Media Day. He's talking about how deep he thinks this team can be. Then what do they get from those freshmen as well? Like Hayden Simeon. I'll in just a minute kind of dive into what I saw last night at the Garden and Black Madness event. But what do those freshmen give you outside of Eli Ellis? EJ Walker is a guy that his athleticism is really standing out. So a lot of different options they can go with this starting five. But the more that we talk about each option and throwing Cam Scott in there too, what kind of jump has he taken? It's just a lot of different options and potential for a pretty what could be a deep roster.
Yeah, I think that any coach, by the time you get to conference play, wants to have this thing whittled down to 8 to 9 tops. I think 8's the best number. You want to make sure that your players aren't committing unnecessary fouls that make you go deeper into your rotation. But with the way the Gamecocks have scheduled in the non-con, really, Alex, there's only three games. Maybe you can find a fourth in there if you really squint. I mean, you got the Greenbrier Classic, then you have Clemson, and then another ACC
Yeah.
opponent. I think it's Virginia Tech.
Yeah, Virginia Tech's your ACC SEC challenge, and
Yeah,
not to jump right in on that conversation, but kind of already started looking at that non-conference schedule and what it could be. And we've talked about how it feels like it's really similar to what that schedule was 2 years ago for the NCAA tournament team. You mentioned the Greenbrier tournament with Butler and Northwestern. Like, preseason polls don't matter, and I mean we've seen how much those really matter in the long run at the end of the seasons. But when you look at what those teams are kind of where they're being placed, like, it looks like a middle to kind of bottom tier in both of those leagues. Virginia Tech is the one that could be interesting. They've got, we know how good of a coach Mike Young is. They've got a really good, international like point guard who came in, who they got from international, and he's going to be really interesting in watching. His garnering a lot of hype, and I think they did pretty well in the transfer portal. So that could end up being a pretty good matchup there at home. And then that Clemson matchup is always one that seems like no matter where both teams are at, it's one that comes down to the wire. But in the long run, it feels like a schedule that, if South Carolina is able to handle business, kind of unlike they did last year with the North Florida loss early in the season, if you can handle, some of those, handle your business, like, it feels like a schedule that can help that team gel and get at right before they get into that SEC slate, which is going to be another daunting schedule.
Yeah, and I think this, like, to your point, Alex, this non-con right here. I mean, we talked about Michi, we talked about Mike, and we talked about Elijah probably being the starters. Then I think it's going to be a really big battle between Kevin Knox, Miles Studi, Eli Ellis, Cam Scott. That would really be like the 5 wing/guards that I think are in the conversation right now. Cam Scott, despite of what he did last season, he has matured, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean, his basketball game has matured. Any freshman is going to be thrown into the fire, and Eli Ellis is going to experience that this year. But I think that, you look at those 5 guys, you feel pretty good. If we haven't talked about K-Pick at all.
Yeah,
he can play. I mean, if he's your 8th guy, you feel pretty good, I think. Mm-hmm. So I think Lamont probably wants to get this down to 8 or 9. You mentioned Hayden earlier. Hayden's going to play. He's a guy that, man, Alex, I feel like it was a year ago. I just said, watch this kid, because you can't teach the X factor he has and the athleticism he has. And I said at the time, he reminded me a little bit of a Colin Murray Boyles. Right now, a year later, you're talking about a lottery pick. That's a lot of pressure to put on a kid. But he's a kid that I have really high expectations for. I said at the time, he is the definition of a Wisconsin stretch 4. Mm-hmm. That's what he is. That's what Wisconsin went to back-to-back national championships with. What Lamont Paris is used to coaching. And Sam Decker, even if you don't forget, Sam Decker used to suck at shooting. So don't forget that.
And to your point on this, Simeon, like, I'll go ahead and kind of jump into some of the things I saw last night at the Garden and Black Madness event. He was one, like, the freshman from the men's side. Like, we'll start there. Like, Miles Studi in the 3-point competition to start off the night. Miles Studi and Michi Johnson were both really good. Like, Miles probably had the best night overall. He since he's been at South Carolina, like, that corner 3 has been really his staple. Like, he's really good at that, and he showed that last night. And I'm not going to dive too much into what the 3-point competition looked like, because you're shooting on air, and it's hard to overanalyze too much that went on last night. But sticking with the freshmen, like, Grant Polk looked really good last night. Some of the talk about him has been from a shooting perspective. Like, Lamont Paris has said it, that he's one of the best shooters he's ever been around, kind of in his coaching career. And he showed that last night. Like, I think at one point I saw him knock down like 8 in a row, 9 in a row, or something like that. So, what kind of role can he carve out for himself? Like, it's hard to be just a shooter in college basketball, like, because then teams on the other side of the floor are going to kind of expose you there. So is he kind of going to be ready to do enough defensively to make an impact? But he's obviously, got that the coach staff's attention just with his shooting form. And I mean, he was pretty, red hot last night. And then with the Simeon, I remember we talked to coaches and players at Media Day a few weeks ago, beginning of the month. And the thing that kept popping up about him was just his motor and kind of his consistency. And that's two things that with freshmen, you don't see, you maybe don't see that as often just because you're having to make that adjustment from high school to college. But I think probably the level that he played at with Moravian Prep in the OTE league with Eli Ellis and those guys probably helped some of that. But his motor is something that really is, I think maybe could be something that gets him on the floor. And I think, just from a physical standpoint too, I think he looks pretty good for a freshman too. But you saw the athleticism last night with jumping over not one 7-footer, but two 7-footers to win the dunk contest. So that was pretty impressive. So that was kind of some of the takeaways there. Like it's hard to read too much into kind of the on court stuff and some of these types of events. But that's just two things that really stood out to me right there.
Yeah, and look, I've been around enough college basketball programs that I know that even a center can shoot 60% on air from the 3-point line. I mean, it's just they're shooting 1,000 shots a day, and when they get in that rhythm, it's a layup. But good to see there. I think this team will be a better shooting team. I think they're not going to turn the ball over as much as they did last year. I think that'll be a strength of this team, and those are the two biggest weaknesses last year. So I have high hopes for this team. Like we said Sunday night, I don't think that it's pencil or Sharpie them into the NCAA tournament, but definitely I think they have a chance to be on the bubble and maybe on the right side of the bubble when everything comes together. But Alex, we got to move on. I'm sure there'll be plenty of basketball fallout from this weekend, and as we hear more and more. But Alabama, Alex, like I mentioned before, 30-17 is what Vegas says. It's kind of shocking for Gamecock fans to hear that. I mean, your hope is that the Alabama team that played Florida State shows up in Williams-Brice. Wow, Alex. Looking at the trajectory of those two teams at this point in the season, when there were a lot of questions about Ty Simpson. I thought he played pretty daggum good in that Florida State game. I thought Alabama guys dropped a lot of passes, but he's been on fire. Alabama's been on fire, Alex. I don't know if you know this, but they beat Wisconsin by 24, Georgia on the road by 3, Vanderbilt at home by 16, Missouri on the road by 3, and then Tennessee this past weekend by 17. So you're talking about a team that's humming on all cylinders. And when you think about Alabama right now, Alex, correct me if I'm wrong, and if I'm just completely off base here, tell me. But I still think Alabama can't lose another game and feel good about making the college football playoff unless that game's in the conference championship, because that Florida State loss keeps looking worse and worse. So you're going to have a dialed-in team in Williams-Brice.
Yeah, I mean, their schedule from here on out, really, with LSU coming to town next week and then Oklahoma next week, that's probably your two, hardest games for Alabama. So, it's just one like it feels like, maybe you can have one more loss, but you'd rather that loss be in like the SEC championship game. But that Florida State loss just seems like week by week just looks worse and worse. And it, not to dive too much into, Alabama's schedule and all that, but it feels like, that was a week 1 game where Florida State was just pumped and ready for that game and then put everything into it and played almost like a perfect game in that one.
And this Alabama Crimson Tide offense, really the head of the snake is Ty Simpson, the quarterback. I mean, 70% completion percentage this season. I think 8.9 yards per pass attempt, 1,900 yards passing, 18 touchdowns versus 1 interception. While he's not a guy, Alex, I think that's going to be, a dual threat quarterback. He has some wiggle to him. I've seen him, go get some first downs, running for 5, 6, 3, 4 improvised yards. So maybe a little bit of Garrett Nussmeier to him. Maybe even maybe less than Bo Pabrilla from Missouri. Probably definitely less, but somebody that wants to sit in the pocket and wants to dissect you.
I like the Nussmeier comparison just from a run standpoint. Like it feels like one where it's not going to be a run first for him, but if you give him an open lane where he needs to pick up 5 for a first down, he can go and do it.
Yeah, and Jeremy Bernard, Ryan Williams, they lead the way. They've got about 50% of Alabama receiving yards, 50% of Alabama touchdowns. They got 5 pass catchers, maybe 6 pass catchers with already over 200 yards receiving this year. So very, very balanced offense. Ty Simpson has a lot of options there. Looking at the run game, man, they're not crazy there. They only have about 800 yards rushing. They don't really have a guy that's the bell cow. I mean, I know they've had some injuries and stuff like that they've dealt with. But this is a game, Alex, where I mean, the Tide of 8 rushing touchdowns on the year and 22 passing. If that is an opportunity for the Gamecocks to say, okay, well, let's shut down the passing game, make you run, I feel pretty solid that Alabama can do it. But how do you beat them, Alex?
That, it's going to be interesting to see how Clayton White kind of plays this game against Alabama's offense, just because, remember last week we were kind of talking about going into the Oklahoma game, how, there wasn't a whole lot. They weren't running. Oklahoma wasn't running the ball all that well going into that game, and then they, come out and they're running really well in that game. Alabama, as you mentioned, dealt with some injuries early on in the season at running back. I mean, Jam Miller's a really good running back, but I think broke his collarbone kind of in preseason and missed some of those early games. But he's starting to come on, so you're gonna have to respect it. But then, with Todd Simpson and some of these receivers that you mentioned, Jeremy Bernard, Ryan Williams, Isaiah Horton, and Brooks, like those guys are really, really good to go along with Cuevas at tight end. Like there's a lot that South Carolina's going to have to, kind of track in this game from a defensive standpoint. And that secondary is probably going to be facing one of their toughest tests because Ty Simpson, give him credit. When he's got time back there in the pocket, he can sit there and pick you apart. So one of the biggest keys in this game is, what kind of pressure can South Carolina get on Ty Simpson? And are you able to do it without bringing linebackers or bringing blitzes or anything like that?
Yeah, and Alex, don't forget, I mean, I hate to sound not very optimistic right now, y'all, but Alabama offense also converts 49% of its third downs on the season. So even when you get them to third down, it doesn't necessarily mean that good things are going to happen. They might be extending that drive. Looking at Alabama's common opponents this season versus South Carolina, Missouri, and Vanderbilt, they give up 38 points combined to those two teams, so 19 on average per game. And the Gamecocks, as we mentioned Sunday night under Mike Schuler, are scoring 14.3 offensive points per game. So, like I said, it's so hard to feel much optimism right now. I can tell you that one of my biggest regrets in my sports reporting life, I'll call it that, or even my sports, just going to games. I mean, I've been to virtually every SEC stadium, a bunch of ACC stadiums. I rarely turn down an opportunity to go to a game. But when South Carolina played Tennessee a couple years ago, me and my wife were in the middle of a move. I just said, hey, it's too much to try and get to Columbia tonight and get back at 2 a.m. And I wish I had gone. So if you're a Gamecock fan that's out there and you're debating on going, there's going to be a lot of former players that are going to be acknowledged at halftime of this game. Pat DeMarco, Steven Garcia, all those guys are going to be there. So just remember that while the season sucks right now, don't just think there's no shot. There's always a shot. Pat DeMarco talks about that. Even in the NFL, there's always a shot. When you look at this Tide defense, opponents only convert 37% of third downs against them. Opponents only average 6.1 yards per pass attempt versus them. So Lenore's just did 5.2 against Oklahoma. So that's kind of scary to look at. Opponents have averaged 4.7 yards per rush against the Tide and 154 yards rushing per game. Maybe this is the game. Maybe this is it. This is the game. Mike Shula establishes the run early and often and gets those guys going. But I will tell you, take all those statistics with a grain of salt because we know that Vanderbilt and Missouri like to run the ball. We know that Tennessee, despite spreading the field out, they do like to run the ball as well. Wisconsin, who knows what they're doing right now? I can't tell you what Wisconsin's game plan is. So if you're looking for glimpses of hope, it's that. Maybe you can get the run game going. Maybe you can shorten this game, give the Gamecocks an opportunity to score those last points that might win the game. And then if the Gamecocks can find their way to the red zone, I know that's been harder to crack than a Rubik's Cube lately for the Gamecocks. But Alabama opponents are 11 of 17 in the red zone. So they have gotten points on 11 of 17 possessions, and 10 of those have been touchdowns. So maybe if the Gamecocks can get there, some of that touchdown luck will turn their way. But as I mentioned, I think it's going to take something miraculous for South Carolina to win the game this upcoming weekend, Alex. We talked about the SEC. We talked about Alabama during the summer. That was one of the teams we previewed. And I said then I thought Alabama was going to win the national championship. I stand by that. They've been better than I thought they would be. I got a little worried got a little worried when they lost to Florida State. But yeah, so Alex, I think for me, it's hard to ignore this point spread and the over under. When you look at a 30 to 17 point game, which is where Vegas is settled. And remember, Vegas isn't trying to say this is my prediction. They set a line, they set it over under, and then the market decides it. So it looks like the game might be closer than you or I would think. But Alex, it's time for predictions. I'll let you start.
Thank you for letting me start. I'll go Alabama. Yeah, I just with the offense, like I'm in full. Guys see it that they're going to be able to do something against these SEC defenses, and I think the defense will be able to hold them back a little bit early. But I think those wide receivers and Ty Simpson will be too much. I'll go 28-7.
Okay, 28-7. So Alabama covers and under there for you, Alex. For me, I said Alabama 41, South Carolina 13. I think the Gamecocks find a touchdown, whether it's early in the game, whether it's in garbage time. I don't think that Shane's going to make the mistake that he made last week and not take points when the points are available for him. So I think they'll kick 2 field goals, maybe get a garbage time touchdown. And it pains me to say that 41-13, in that case, I have Alabama covering and I have the game going to the over. But the South Carolina defense is really good, y'all. I don't want to glaze over that fact. I think the South Carolina defense is going to give the Gamecocks every opportunity to stay in this game, which is going to be, when is the dam going to break? When is it going to be too many points to overcome? Yeah. When are the Gamecocks going to be going for it on 4th down?
Yeah, against Oklahoma, they defensively did not get to Mateer enough, and when he had enough time back in that pocket, like if you do that against Simpson, it feels like it could end up being a long day defensively with those weapons on the outside.
Yeah, and like I said, it pains me to say it, but that's where I have it. I'd love to see a Gamecock upset. I really would. I'd love to see this thing get back on track. And let's not forget what happened before Tennessee. Marcus Satterfield basically got training wheels put on him. I don't know. I haven't heard anything that's going to be the case for Mike Shula. So we'll see. But we got to get to Justin and sportscapvalue.com, and we got to get to our best bets and talk a little bit of betting on this show. So Alex and I both have the Gamecocks losing, Alabama covering, and we differ on the over-under. But we'll get Justin to talk about that in just 1 minute.
Morning, Carl. Usual?
Yeah.
Your oldest was in here the other day. Said the two of you took a trip down to my neck of the woods. How'd that go?
You might as well give me one of those Carolina cars while you're at it.
I knew I liked that one.
Yeah.
There you go, my friend.
Thanks.
Hey, Carl. Congratulations.
See you tomorrow, Freddie.
You bet.
JC Sherbert here had a brilliant idea that some good friends of mine in Florence have told me about. Next time you're having a wedding or an event or anytime you got to feed a bunch of people, talk to my friends over at Flavortown Eats and Events. That's right. It's a food truck / trailer, prepares the food fresh on site right there for you. No hassle. It's absolutely delicious. They'll come out, turnkey solution to feed the masses at your event. Go to their website right now. flavortownflow.com. That's flavortownflow.com. They have all the contact information you need, and they are a proud sponsor of the Late Night Gamecock Show and the Chief Sports Network.
Welcome to Palm Casual Patio Furniture. Because we are the factory, Palm Casual has the ability to offer the highest quality outdoor furniture paired with world-class service. Since 1979, our factory showrooms have done our best to make the buying process as easy as possible for our customers. Our understanding of the many factors that go into your decision has helped us create our 30-day trial period that increases the level of comfort our customers feel during the shopping experience. Visit us in Somerville, Mount Pleasant, Myrtle Beach, and Bluffton, and online at palmcasual.com for our products and out-of-state locations. Go Gamecocks!
This is the Late Night Gamecock Show with the pride of Hampton County, Alex Jones. And with the king of late night, Matt Anderson. Go Gamecocks!
Welcome back in, everyone. I want to give a special shout out to EXO and SC Lawman here in the comment box. Throw out your comments, throw out your questions, everything like that. Happy to have y'all here with us tonight. With that, we're going to bring in Justin Lyles from sportscapvalue.com, as we do every time, every week at this time, I should say. I was texting with Justin a little bit before the show today, and y'all remember, Justin owns a sports caffeine website, but he is a Gamecock fan. So he will bet on the Gamecocks, bet against the Gamecocks. He tries to be as neutral as he can, and he does a really good job of that when it comes to picking games. But Justin, I have a feeling you're a little bit frustrated by the Gamecocks offense after last week.
Yeah, I was watching y'all wrap up the last segment prior to the break. I stole some candy from my son, and I was eating one of these, an Airhead. That's what our football team is right now, full of Airheads. So, yeah, frustrated is a kind of understatement, I guess. I found a lot of value on the Gamecocks all season up to this point, and they keep losing me money. So, yeah, I don't know what to say. I just kind of recapping on the game last week. That was about as bad a performance as I've seen going back to the Muschamp days prior to his being let go as a coach and looking for a new head coach. So I think this program's got a lot of work to do. And then with Shane Beamer just, getting butthurt with the media asking questions that are more than warranted based on what the offense is producing. I mean, coming out 7 points and basically flat on all three facets of the game, defense, offense, special teams. It was, a terrible performance. And then, trying to get points at the beginning of the game, not taking the points. And then obviously even the announcers on TV are calling for the fake punt. They do that. And then when they do that fake punt, the guy runs a 3-yard out or whatever it was. It wasn't much of any trickeration at all. And the defense didn't come to play. There's probably questions that are going to be, and I'm not suggesting this. I'm not thinking this is the case, but it could be asked. Is you wonder if there's some stuff going on in the locker room? Obviously, with dismissing Tinsley 2 weeks ago, we kind of briefly touched on it last week with JB. So I don't know. I'm not inside that locker room, but Shane Beamer's got his work cut out for him for the next 5 games and beyond.
Yeah, there are a couple of funny things. And Alex, that's one of the things I love Alex being in the media room, because sometimes I'll just be like, did I just hear what I thought I heard? And you had Shane Beamer saying on the SEC Sunday telecast or teleconference call that, we knew that nobody could run the ball against Oklahoma. And that was our game plan, to run the ball, which is very questionable. And then you had Mike Shula today saying that he wants to make the defense guard every inch of the field. And Justin, you've been watching this a lot. What's your take on that?
That's a bunch of baloney. I mean, you're averaging, I think you said earlier, 14 points a game, give or take. We scored 7 last week, 10 the week prior, coming off a bye. And then you go back and watch the tape, and these plays that he's running, the receivers aren't spread out. The tight ends aren't spread out. They're running up the middle. There's no trickeration. There's no imagination. There's no kind of pre-motion snaps. There's none of that. So he must have a new playbook he's getting ready to pull out. So I'll wait. I'll be watching. So I'm hoping for the best.
I feel like we've said it every week talking about this offense, but there's way too many people in the box. I mean, and you run into these loaded boxes, and it feels like, he kind of talked about it a little bit today, like, they get away from stuff too early. Some things that were like, go back to that Virginia Tech game, those tight end passes were working so well. You haven't really seen those again a whole lot. Like, you feel like, you talk about stretching the field, those stretch the field from sideline to sideline, and just, it's the same things over and over again.
I don't think have we gone for the home run pass at all? I think we did it one time last game, if I recall correctly. I mean, there's just no aggressiveness. The 3 straight calls up the middle. I mean, and then we're lucky we got the touchdown. I think Lenore just threw it up, and it just happened to be a receiver there. To be honest with you.
I think so too.
And the fact that we're down 7 points going into halftime is a miracle.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that whole touchdown drive. I mean, just you kept running right into them, and you like just at the one point when you're on like the inch line, pretty much getting to the end where the ball's basically in the end zone, like just do a quarterback sneak. And I know they've had some issues with under center type stuff, but it feels like with a quarterback like Norris, you should be able to get in there. And then with the issues you've had in the run game and going into shotgun on those plays, it just felt like you're just kind of asking for that.
Yeah, the clock management too. The clock management prior to half. I mean, what are we doing there? We got a chance to get some more points, and just poor execution, not prepared. I think it's all around just I'm not blaming one person, not blaming Beamer. I think it's just poor execution, poor discipline, poor accountability, all the above.
So, Justin, I'm not going to hit you over the head with a ton of basketball stuff tonight. We'll get to basketball as the season approaches. I know you're still knee deep in college football and NFL and probably professional soccer and tennis and all that. You cover every sport on sportscatvalue.com. But I do have one interesting question regarding football that I'd love to get your take on. Have you ever seen a team at this point be 1-6 versus the spread either way? Because the only spread the Gamecocks have covered this year, maybe they've covered two. I think they cover Virginia Tech and they cover Kentucky.
Yeah,
they covered Kentucky, right?
At some point, because I saw the number at 13.5 yesterday, and I looked today, it was 12.5. Do professional bettors just say, look, caution to the wind, at some point, this has to turn around?
Yeah, I mean, I just think, I'm obviously following this team a lot closer than most handicappers are doing, when they're looking at the whole board, as far as me looking at other teams. But with South Carolina, what I've seen so far, I have no other choice but to fade them for the time being until they prove me wrong. I mean, the offense hasn't shown anything, but you'll see those spreads get larger and larger until a point where you have to take the Gamecocks is what's going to happen if they continue to go on this slide that they're on.
Yeah, I thought the 13.5 was begging you to take Alabama, but I was wrong because the point spread dropped another point. And look, like Alex and I mentioned at the beginning, and Justin, you know this better than anybody, Vegas has their power ratings, they have their numbers, they set a line, and then the market decides the final line. And then it's just we want even money as best we can on both sides, and we're going to take the juice. And that's why there's big old buildings in Las Vegas and not big old buildings in Hartsville, South Carolina and Florence, South Carolina, where Justin and I are from. But so yeah, that was interesting to me. I'm sure that you'll give us your take on that game here in a little bit, but do you want to hear about your last week? You can highlight anything you want, NFL, college football, any sport really, Justin. We just love to hear about your successes.
Yeah, so last week I know we went over a couple games, Alex, with JB, and I'm pretty sure the public did well last week. Me being professional, I did not. I took it on the chin because looking back, I started off Friday with Louisville and the Miami over. And if Carson Beck doesn't throw that interception, it goes over. He threw 5 picks, 4 that counted. Anyway, so I started off the weekend pretty poorly. And then we talked about the Vanderbilt and LSU last week. There was about 4 broken plays in that game that went for touchdowns. So the under did not hit because of that, which is you don't see that a whole lot. I did have Vandy on the money line, so that worked out. I did speak about Boston College. They looked poor. I missed on that one. And then Duke was a fishy line. I was on Duke. They fumble on the goal line for a 14-point swing. Georgia Tech picks it up, runs for a touchdown. Anyway, that's 14-point swing. That cost me that game. And the biggest game of the week that I missed on was South Carolina. I love the value on South Carolina. I spoke about it last week. 5.5 points. I thought they should have won the game outright based on my numbers, but they were flat all over the board. And sometimes it goes that way. And I took that one on the chin. I'll be the first to admit it. I missed on that one. Hit on Indiana and Michigan State over, and then Coastal and App State took that on the over. That was a shootout. And then Ole Miss, I had them plus 7.5. They're up 2 touchdowns, and they lose by 8. Just crazy stuff last week for me. And then I missed on Clemson. I like Clemson in this spot at -3. The numbers were shaking out pretty good. Again, another poor performance from Clemson. So I don't know where they stand at this point, along with South Carolina. And then
I will say this, Justin. Here's what we appreciate about you. The last 4, 5, 6 weeks, you've been coming in saying great week, great week, great week. And what you're not going to find is people with the accountability of Justin who come and say, yeah, it wasn't my best week. Let me explain to you the things that were my thought process and the things that went against me on this pick that don't happen in 90% of games. I mean, Justin, you could become a millionaire just taking a parlay on all of those individual things happening in those games that cost you to lose.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, I was talking to some folks while we were watching the South Carolina game, and like the guy I was talking to is like, who should I play for this 3:30? Who should I parlay? And I said, well, first of all, you shouldn't parlay anybody, to be honest with you. And second of all, don't be chasing your losses after the 12 o'clock games. Like, that's your first two mistakes right there. That's like that's the testament. Don't do that. And then, but we had a good laugh about it. And then, I got a bone to pick real quick. Sorry. Tennessee, Alabama. We talked about the over last. Y'all know math. Y'all know ball. If you're down 17 points, how many scores do you need? You guys are three at least, right?
Yeah.
Josh Heupel is on the 15-yard line, 20-yard line, whatever it was, about 5 minutes to go in the game. They're down 17. It's 4th and 11. What should you do there? You should kick the field goal to extend the game, right? He decides to go for it. He doesn't get it. Of course he doesn't get it. It's 4th and 11. They get the ball back. They're about to score again. So, there's a small probability that they come back and tie the game, but extend the game. These guys make so much money, and they continue to do this. It blows my mind, and it cost me the over there. So that was so frustrating.
Justin, not even that, man. I was hanging out with some guys that took Alabama in the money, and not the money line. Alabama minus the points.
Yes,
and they were sweating it out at the end of the game because
how did they not review that last touchdown? Like, I think he got in.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
And then they were like, crap. All right, they get another chance here. They're going to score a touchdown. They're going to go for 2. They're going to knock this number out of my win. And I was just like, guys, man, football's funny. Like, you can't.
Dude, they run the ball in the last play of the game, and the guy stretches out across the goal line, and the referee on the sideline comes in and marks on like the half-yard line, and they don't review it or anything. They just say the game's over. I'm like, what are we doing?
Well,
sorry,
man, that's it's always fun.
The Auburn Tigers, what are we doing with them? Because please do not let me bet them this weekend. Do not let me bet them this weekend.
Well, Justin, you're the king of your kingdom, man. You can pick any game you want. I will laugh though, because I told Alex on Sunday night that I noticed y'all didn't do best bets. I didn't know if JB was going to fill in for my picks or not. I would have trusted his picks. He's pretty good at it. So no bets last week. But you said the public would have done well. Man, yes. Let me just tell you, I would have gone 15-0 last week if I had been on the show. I would have had a free pick lined up, but I didn't. I wasn't on the show, and probably good because we'll get to my best bets here, my best bets record here in a little bit. But Justin, this time of the show, we always like to hear things you're tracking right now, any games that are, at least intriguing to you. I'm sure Alex and I might have a game or two else, but we'll let you take the stage.
Yeah, so what I like to normally do and how I kind of behind the scenes give our viewers and listeners a kind of how I do things for the most part week to week. So I kind of go through the middle of the week and start looking at lines and what I see, what I like, and I'll start marking them. And then I'll go back prior to Saturday morning, or if it's a Friday game, what have you, and then I'll kind of review it. And then I'll review the whole board as well and start putting stuff together. So initially what I'm looking at with right now is Ole Miss. I like them to bounce back against Oklahoma. I think they probably should have beat Georgia. And then I'm taking Alabama. I'm fading South Carolina. I just don't see how South Carolina can cover this game unless Alabama just comes out flat. And then we could talk about that later as far as my prediction. I just don't – they're coming off 4 straight ranked teams they've beat. Far as South Carolina, the team total under 16 and a half. Mike Shula, you talk about spreading the offense out. Let me see it. I want to see it. So, and then I like the Missouri Vanderbilt over 52.5. I think that's going to be a high score. Really, I think a really underrated game of the week too for college football overall. This has some college football implications on it, I think, as far as who's going to make the playoff. And then Iowa State is hosting BYU, who's undefeated, laying the points. I like them there. And then I like Mississippi State at home against Texas. They've played pretty well. I mean, could easily have 6 wins on their schedule. And I like watch out for an upset here against Texas. And then I like TCU, West Virginia over 55.5. And then this is a kind of I'm just going to throw this against the wall and hope it sticks. I like Wisconsin team total over 6.5 points. I think they get a garbage touchdown against Oregon. I really do. It's plus money, and I just think there's some value there. Late in the game, I could be wrong. They may get shut out, and then I like LSU. I don't think LSU can afford to lose another game here. I think Texas A&M's undefeated. I'm going back to the well with LSU to pull the upset against A&M. And then I've been kind of eyeing. I'm a little iffy on this one, but Kentucky hosting Tennessee, getting 9.5 at home. They've played pretty well based on all the talks that's been going around them with Mark Stoops. But I'm kind of seeing Kentucky on getting the points.
Alex, any games that Justin didn't hit on that you'd like to hear about?
Yeah, Missouri Vanderbilt. It's one that I have kind of circled for one of our picks later. But just interested in what you're thinking about that one right now.
Yeah, I mean, Missouri, I had Auburn last week. They're leading the game late. They let Missouri score, force overtime, and then Missouri wins in overtime. Vanderbilt's look good. I mean, they beat LSU. They continue to win. But, man, something about Eli Drinkwitz. I think he's a really good coach. I know a lot of South Carolina fans don't like him, but I think this guy, Missouri's going to be – I would not be surprised if they lose him after this year. He's done a heck of a job at Missouri, and he just finds a way to win games. And I like Missouri if I had to pick a team in this spot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that one's so interesting to me too. I mean, there's a lot of good games this weekend, and I'll be honest, the more and more I'm in this media business, it's harder for when the team you're covering plays at 3:30 because you're really in the stadium. You're not watching the end of the noon games. You're really catching maybe the second half of the 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock games, and you don't really see what happens. So, but there are a lot of good games on the slate. Justin, one of the questions I wanted to ask you before Alex and I get to our best bet segment is, when is the time? Is there ever a time to start looking at futures on the Heisman, national championship? I feel like after 7-8 games for every team, we have a good enough sample size. I mean, for me, I'll go out on a limb here, Alex, and tell me if I'm crazy. I think Alabama should be the favorite to win the national championship. If they're not the favorite, I'm sure Ohio State, Indiana, Penn State, not Penn State, or Oregon could be up there as well. But I'd love to know where Alabama is. That's where I'd lay my money. I'm not sleeping on Georgia. They keep finding ways to win games, and it might bite them at some point. And I'm not going to penalize them for losing to Alabama by 3. So any futures you like right now, Justin?
Yeah, I'm with you. Alabama is at plus 630. I like them. I mean, obviously Ohio State's the favorite. They've been kicking everybody's tail week in and week out. And they're not really – a lot of people aren't really talking about them just because they've been dominating for so long. I think the value – I know you don't like Georgia, but there is value there on Georgia at 10-1. But I'm kind of eyeing Ole Miss. I really like Ole Miss. Value-wise, I'm not saying they're going to win the title, but value-wise, I like Ole Miss right at 25-1. So, and then, Missouri's playing Vanderbilt. Somebody's going to get knocked out from that. Tennessee's still hanging around, and LSU's still hanging around. Obviously, LSU can't afford to lose, or they're going to be out. They've got to run the table. But if you're looking to kind of get some value, my early pick of the season was LSU. And that's following since they lost last week to Vanderbilt and lost 2 games. And then you've got Indiana going back up the board at 8-1. So, Kurt Cinetti's doing his thing, and we'll see how that plays out going, down the stretch.
One team I wanted to get your take on, because I think that you were high on them prior to last Friday night, but Miami might have some sneaky value here. It's not often that, well, I shouldn't say it's not often. Carson Beck's done it before, but it's not often any quarterback throws 4, should be 5 interceptions in a game. If Carson Beck can get back right, hopefully he's not seeing ghosts for Miami. Miami might be a good pick as well to take some value right now off the loss. You always tell us, don't look too hard at last week, y'all. Don't let recency bias get in the way.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, they're at 15-1. And they lost to a very good team. Louisville's very good, and Brom's a good coach. And if I had my pick of the litter, I'd just say I wouldn't mind seeing him coach somewhere, where a team that I'll pull for. He's a good coach at Louisville, and they're lucky to have him. And they could sneak up too in the ACC as well. So there's a lot of ball left. They've only lost one game, and they're way down the list as far as value wise.
I think people forget that with the Gamecocks having such a porous season so far, that there's still a lot of football left. I mean, you got 5 regular season games, you got conference championships, and until those 6 games are played, you don't know who the Heisman is. You don't know who the national champion is going to be. So I think now's the time, if you like a team, throw your chips in the middle and just say, hey, I know could be a long shot, but now's the time.
Yeah, and there's value too on like picking teams to make the playoff too. That's something too that's kind of different. Maybe you're not seeing a team that could go all the way, but could sneak into the playoff. I think you could find some value on that's kind of more obtainable than actually winning the whole thing.
Yeah, I can see that as well. Alex, anything before we get to our best bets?
No, I was looking back through the 5 I chose, and I was like, I think I feel pretty good about them. I need to get back on track after this little bye week we had.
Yeah, like I said, I would have gone 5-0, 10-0, 15-0. I could have really separated myself from you, Alex, on the show last week. But just to recap, last week, Alex, you went 2-3, which brings your record on the season to 20-15. I went 1-4, so my record now is 16-19. So we both picked 35 games. Look, if I go an entire season only down 3 picks, I'm not too mad about it, but I do want to catch Alex. So I put a lot of thought into this week. Alex, you got a solid 4-game lead on me right here. What are you looking at this week? I'll let you go first. I've stopped sending Alex my picks, by the way. I'm not giving him anything anymore.
Well, so I asked about this game earlier. Going to Missouri and Vanderbilt, like the over-under right now is 52.5. I'm going to go under in this one. With the way Vanderbilt plays defense, and the way they're kind of hold that tempo offensively, they really can drag these games into these low-scoring type of games. No, they can also put up points, but Missouri's got a good defense too, and I just think this is going to end up being like a real kind of 2010, 2014 could end up being that type of game.
Yeah, I had the over on this one. So initially we'll see what happens come Saturday morning. I can see it both going either way. Vanderbilt's looked impressive on offense, and so has Missouri, but
yeah,
maybe they figure each other out.
Well, I think to get to the over here, you're going to have a turnover-free game, and Diego Pavia hasn't had a turnover-free game in a big game in a while. I mean, heck, he played pretty good against South Carolina, but I think he even threw an interception in that game. So, yeah, Alex, I wasn't on that, but I was on this game. And, I promise I don't text Justin ahead of time. I think you two text each other, though, because you've been racking up the wins here, Alex. But I'm taking Missouri 2.5, plus 2.5 over Vanderbilt. I would probably sprinkle on this money line. I'd probably just make this a money line bet, to be honest. I think that Missouri is better than Vanderbilt. I think that Vanderbilt's shown too many chinks in the armor in big games so far this year. Missouri just took Alabama to the wire 2 weeks ago. So I'm going to take Missouri plus 2.5. But the real thing here, Justin, I want to get your take on that pick. I know you talked about it earlier, but when you're giving picks, and look, I know Justin really well, but I don't text him like, hey, what do you like on Saturdays? How do you like plus 2.5? Would you rather play the money line in that game, or are you looking for that 3, 3.5, 4? I mean, I know you love it, but you understand what I'm asking?
Right. It just depends on what the value is, what the money line value is for that team. In this case, let's see, I'll pull it up real quick. I think money line for Missouri is give or take around plus 125 versus playing, minus 110 to get the points. So it just depends on what I'm looking at and what my numbers come out to be as far as what I think the score is going to be. But I'm with you. I mean, it's a good observation in taking the money line here and getting that value.
Yeah, let's not get twisted. I'm taking the plus 2.5 just in case, but I would sprinkle on the money line.
Right.
So, Alex, I feel like we've talked about a lot of these games. We might have some similar games. We might have some similar picks, but who's next for you?
I got Pitt and NC State as my next one. They're 6.5. Pitt's a 6.5 point favorite. I see Pitt covering that. NC State struggled this year, and Pitt's put up some points so far this season. So I got Pitt covering the 6.5.
I like it. Yeah, I'm with you on that. They've looked pretty good overall. I like it.
And I like that 6.5 number. I'm Vegas' sucker. Like if you give me 6.5 versus 7, or you give me 3.5 versus 3, I'll take it every single time. So I love you getting inside that touchdown right there, Alex. I like that a lot. We talked about this game earlier. Well, it's actually Justin's going to give us our picks. This might as well be a good time for Justin to follow my lead here. I have 2 picks of my best bets are in the South Carolina-Alabama game. And I got Alabama minus 12.5. And I got to see it to believe it. I think Alabama's going to roll South Carolina. And then I got the over 47.5. I don't think that Alabama can score 40 points, just with their offense, and Gamecocks, get 10. I think it's going to be like a 41-13 game is the way I have it. Justin, give us your prediction. It's probably your number, but go ahead.
I'm with you on the Bama. I like Bama. I got them at 11.5 earlier in the week. Now it's teetering around 12, give or take. So, I'm with you. I'm fading the Gamecocks until I see more, until they prove themselves. Like you said, 2-6, 2 and whatever they are 2-5 against the spread. It's just not going to get it done. And you're playing like arguably the best team in the country. The question is, will they be motivated or not? And as far as score prediction, I have them 35-10. I think somehow we'll get 10 points. I don't know how. I don't know why I'm saying 10, but I'm being gracious. I am going to take the team total under 16.5, like I spoke about earlier too. Until I see this offense do something, I think the only way that I lose that is if we get some kind of special teams or defensive touchdown miraculously. So I like as far as the total on the game, I'm going to go with the under, with that being said.
Yeah, that all makes perfect sense, and we've said it a lot. And the defense or special teams doesn't score, it's a hard way to get to 20 points right now. All right, Alex, I gave 2, so it looks like you got 1 right here.
Okay. This line surprises me. SMU is a 2.5 point favorite at Wake Forest this week. SMU is coming off the win over Clemson, and they put up some points this year too. In Wake Forest is first year in a new head coach, and they've had some success, but 2.5 in this one feels like it's a pretty easy SMU pick here.
Yeah, Wake Forest has not looked impressive at all. They got Robbie Ashford. Yeah, just not that impressed with him overall. How could you take Wake Forest in this spot?
Yeah.
So, look, as far as many games they play on Saturday, 65, give or take, this is a game that I'm either taking SMU or I'm staying away.
Yeah, I like that a lot too. I don't know if there's going to be a Clemson hangover based on what Clemson's done this year. Sometimes the team gets a big win and you kind of sleepwalk through the next game, especially if it's a team like Wake Forest. But I'm with you guys. I think that I'll probably put a $5 bet in on that one. Next here, Alex, I'll go next. We talked about it earlier. I'm taking LSU plus 2.5 against Texas A&M. Texas A&M 7-0. We all know what happens when Texas A&M gets 7-0. The wheels fall off. They lose their next 4 games, next 3 out of 4. Something always happens to that 12th man up there. So give me LSU plus 2.5 as my official pick, and give me LSU to win the game.
Yes, I'm with you on this. And then we talked about the money line versus the points here. This is the perfect spot to take LSU on the money line. They cannot lose anymore. You know how that program is. It's either national championship or bust. And them being at home, you obviously got to take the money line here and get that extra value against A&M.
All right, so next for me, I am going to Chapel Hill. Virginia's a 10.5 point favorite against North Carolina. I think they cover that.
Yeah, the hook scares me. I might buy the extra hook, buy the extra juice. I've mentioned this prior. I'm not a fan of buying the hook, but if you like Virginia that much in this spot, don't trust the Belichicks.
They're not trust their defense. Their offense hasn't been good. Like Virginia, is kind of coming back down to earth a little bit. They got off to that good start, but I still think they can beat North Carolina by more than 10 points.
Yeah, when a team shows you who they are, just start believing it. And that is who North Carolina is right now. You talk about locker rooms. That locker room, from all reports, is an absolute dumpster fire in Chapel Hill right now. We'll see how long Bill Belichick does it. I mean, I saw that he's been nominated for the Hall of Fame. He might just skip out on the rest of the season and just go get his gold jacket, green jacket, all that jazz. But yeah, who knows with them, Alex? I really do think your last two picks have been pretty spot on. I think sometimes the board's just staring you in the face, and you need to take it. And if you miss, you just lick your wounds and move on. But I like that. I like those two picks because we know the ACC isn't all that. And when you have the cream of the crop usually overperforms against the lesser teams there. The next one here is I've been eyeing this one. It's the very first one I wrote down on my list yesterday. I went back and checked the point spread earlier today, and it's Ole Miss plus 4.5. If you're going to give me Ole Miss as an underdog and they get more than a field goal, I'm going to take it because I believe Lane Kiffin can score on Oklahoma. I think that he's going to dial things up. Oklahoma defense is really good, but let's not, like we talked about it, revisionist history last week, this week. The Ole Miss offense is night and day. It's the yin and yang to the Gamecock offense. So they're going to find a way. I would not be surprised if Ole Miss wins this game, and I'm not going to fault you if you take the Ole Miss money line here. 4.5 is too much.
Yeah, I'm with you. I spoke about this earlier. That was my first game I talked about, Ole Miss. I just think this is the year that Ole Miss gets into the playoff. They're once they get past this game, I think it's pretty straightforward as far as them getting into the playoffs. They may lose one, but I just don't see them going any worse than 10-2. And I think Kiffin's done a great job, and I think he'll find a way to not get on this bad stretch like he's done in the past where he's kind of faltered. And it cost him last year. I don't think that'll be the case this year. Oklahoma wasn't that impressive, I didn't think, last week against South Carolina. I just think South Carolina was that bad overall. They got 26 points, with the safety included. That's because our offense was backed up on the one, and then we tried to run it. Shocker. And then, their defense is pretty good. But like you said, I mean, Kiffin knows how to dial this stuff up with his quarterbacks and playmakers. And so I look for Ole Miss to come out with a win here.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, John Strickland, he's been on our show a handful of times. He's a regular recurring guest on the preview show on Fridays. That man knows ball, and I've talked to John about a lot of ball, and he reminds me over and over again, Oklahoma offense is not good. So don't get it twisted. Even when John Mateer put those stats up earlier. Alex, your last pick here.
Yeah, I'm going to Auburn and Arkansas. This one is 55.5 total. I'm going over in this one. Arkansas does not play defense. They're basically with Petrino trying to outscore everybody. And then, I think Auburn's going to – and then I think on the other side, I think Auburn Arkansas is going to be able to put up some points just because Auburn's defense is good. But, Arkansas against some of the best teams right now, A&M last week defensively is pretty solid defensive team. They put up points against them. So I think it's going to be a high-scoring game, and I got the over on this one.
Yeah, I'm with you. I would lean with you on that. I mean, Auburn's got to win this game, you would think, but Arkansas can score on anybody, like you said. So, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. I don't know who to take in this game. Obviously, I've been liking Auburn as far as value the last couple of weeks, and they should win this game, but Arkansas being down. But I'm with you. I like the points here and expect it to be a shootout with them too.
With the amount of hot seat talk that's on Hugh Freeze right now, he seems like he always gets one of these games, and it's normally against a team that's higher ranked. But it feels like with all the pressure there, like they're going to go all out to win this one.
Who needs more of a win this week, LSU or Auburn?
Oh,
well, I think Auburn's pretty much sealed at this point. LSU's teetering. I go Brian Kelly because I think if he loses this next game, he's gonna be fired. And look, I said this Sunday night, and Alex has already heard this. Justin, you might not have. I don't care about any coach's buyout anymore in this era of college football. When there's as much money in play and as much boosters putting in money, if you have boosters that are willing to throw $1 million a year into the NIL program, you don't think they're going to put $5 million in to get rid of a coach they don't want? Like the buyouts are silly. So I'd say that Brian Kelly needs it more. despite the buyout.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. Yeah, and I mean, you're seeing it more and more. It used to be, years ago that if a coach had a bad season, they let him finish the year out, but not the way that things have changed with the NIL and the portal. I mean, this is NFL, 101, where they're getting ready for next year. You see teams not making the playoff, they're making a change. They're not waiting until the end of the year. And the buyouts thing, I think, is going to go away in the future. That's just my opinion. I think you're going to see coaches get a higher annual salary, but you're not going to see that $50 million, whatever, plus on the table for buyouts. I think they may have a 2 or 3 year deal at $15 million a year, and that's it. And they're moving on. I think that's what the future is going to be, as it kind of following along the guidelines of the NFL.
Well, it's funny, Alex, and I want to get your take on this. And I'm only bringing this up because it's Shane Beamer, and we all have talked about the frustrations. And so, doing this, you have to look at the buyout situation both ways. I just think it's asinine for any college football program to have like a Jimbo Fisher buyout, number one, like where it's $90 million. That's just ridiculous. But number two, if your coach can go to another program and that program only has to pay $5 million, but if you fire that coach, it's $27 million. That's just terrible negotiations. And that's Shane Beamer's situation. He can go anywhere else, pay $5 million, get another $50 million deal. But if he stays, he's going to get $27 million until they fire him.
Yeah, I mean, buyouts have just gotten ridiculous on all sides of this. And, I think a lot of it is, these coaches can have some leverage in this situation. Coaches and agents have some leverage so they can work these types of buyouts to work in their favor. So I think that's a lot of it, but it's just so much money that's out there right now that it's pretty incredible what these buyout numbers have gotten to. And with that, what schools are willing to do to buy out a coach.
Yeah, I'll say this last thing. I used to say this a long time. Like the best job in professional sports or college sports was a fired head coach of a Power 5 program.
Mm-hmm.
That was the best job in the world. You go hang out at the beach for a couple of weeks, whatever. I've changed my gear. That's the second best job in the world. The best job in the world is Jimmy Sexton's job because he's getting paid regardless, and he has all these athletic departments. Like he's the puppeteer, just pulling all the strings, and he's probably made more money than anyone knows. But what a good job!
I'm pretty sure he walked in the stadium last week with Lane Kiffin into Athens, and I mean Lane's in a good spot too. I mean he don't have to do anything. He's going to make an extra $3 or $4 million next year for doing nothing. So. I don't mean nothing. He's had success, but you know what I'm saying.
He hasn't been to the playoff, and he's going to get extra $4 million just for not going to the playoff. Really quick, Justin, I want to get your take on this. For those of you who don't know, Justin, like I said a long time ago, go way back. He played 3 sports in high school. He was a freak of nature. Baseball, SEC had a big day today. Kevin O'Sullivan is taking a leave of absence. And then you have Tennessee's coach Vitello. He's going to the Giants. Just really quick, Justin, do you spend a lot of time capping college baseball?
A little bit. I'm getting more and more into it. I do a lot of MLB, but starting to venture more into college baseball now that they're making it more accessible for betting. So definitely when this comes up next year, I'll definitely be diving into it further and posting plays for sure.
Well, I mean, Kevin O'Sullivan's had the Gamecocks number. Tony Vitello's had the Gamecocks number. It's good to see. We wish Kevin O'Sullivan the best. Say what you want about him as a person. I know people have horror stories. People have the best stories in the world about him. But you don't ever like to see a coach taking a leave of absence for family matters because we just don't know what the situation is. So I always say pray for everybody. So pray for Kevin O'Sullivan. If it works out for the Gamecocks' favor, that's great this upcoming season. But SEC baseball is going to be here before you know it. We're going to be hitting Justin up for college basketball and NBA. NBA started last night. My brother texted me and some of these other guys in a group chat. They all went 2-0 last night in NBA. I said, you're crazy because NBA is hard to handicap. But Justin, you got it covered there too, right?
I do. Yes, NBA kicked off last night with 2 games, and then they've got the rest of the games are playing tonight. So, I mean, this is where it really gets busy, especially when college basketball tips off on November 3rd. We're about 10 days out. I mean, it's every day. Football is usually your typical Thursday to Monday night football. But once college and the NBA get going, it's 7 days a week. So this is really where we're really busy and hitting our stride.
Well, we love it, Justin. We love having you on this show. Thank you again. We'll be back next Wednesday. we will talk about the bloodbath, or, like I said earlier, my biggest regret's not going to that Tennessee game a couple years ago. So maybe magic happens in Williams-Brice. So Justin, thank you so much, and we'll catch you next week.
All right, that sounds good. Y'all have a good one, and we'll talk to you next week.
All right, see you, Justin. Alex, before we get out of here, did want to make a response here. Hayne Painter asked, Matt, who are you most looking forward to watching this basketball season? For me, it's Michi Johnson.
Mm-hmm.
I think that Michi has played his best under Lamont Paris. I've gone into the advanced analytics. I look at his numbers. He's a really, really good player. He's a mature player. I think he's going to be the leader of this team. And so I'm excited about Michi. Alex, do you have a take on that one before we get out?
Yeah, he'd be an answer. I'll go Mike Sherov-Jumps. I'm really intrigued to see kind of, with being a ball handler in Lamont Paris' system, how he kind of fits in. Like, I think there's a lot of potential there just from what you've seen in the highlights, and then just his size at that position. I think defensively is going to be something to watch. But then how he kind of controls the offense is going to be really intriguing to watch.
Yeah, I agree. Mike would have been my second choice, and then Cam Scott pops up to me as well. I'd like to see Cam take that freshman to sophomore leap.
I'll throw another one out there, Elijah Strong, too.
Yeah.
He's getting a lot of talk from the coaches. Like they raved about him at Media Day a few weeks ago, and he's going to play a big role on this team.
Yeah, absolutely. I see Carolina Titans in here easily. Ole Miss over for sure. And then Brian, we love when you and your mother join us. Brian's talking about 2010. That was awesome. 35-21. I think that Steven went 17 of 21 in the game, and one of his incompletions that I always laugh about was throwing it into the end zone and hitting the field goal post. I've never asked Steven about that. I need to ask him about that next time I talk to him. But that was fun. Hey, look, college sports are a crazy thing. Again, I tell you, one of my biggest regrets is not going to that Tennessee game a couple years back. So regardless of how you feel about the team, I promise you, you probably felt just as badly about Marcus Satterfield and the Gamecocks back then. So hopefully the Gamecocks right this ship. They need to get 3 more wins to get to a bowl game. That's good for the program. It's good for keeping players involved in the program. And it's a good stepping stone. And if you're going to have a bad year, at least make a bowl. Right, Alex?
Yeah.
Well, Alex, we have gone a little bit longer tonight, but I think it's always good conversations. I know that we're working on some special guests as basketball season approaches. And Alex and I cannot wait for basketball, the men's and the women's, because we love football. Like, I can talk football whether Gamecocks are 0-11 or 11-0. There's always something to talk about, and we'll always continue to break down the games. And, me and Alex were joking about coach speak today, just moving on to the next opponent. Yeah. We're going to break them down, and we're going to talk about it.
Yeah, it's gotten to be that point with South Carolina. But, to your point, it's, football never stops either with recruiting or things like that. And then before you know it, like, it's 2 weeks, basketball season's here, but football will still be rolling right through. So we'll have it all covered. And then before you know it, baseball will be here. Yeah.
And remember, you only get 12, 13 of these lucky days a year where your team's playing football. So just try and enjoy the best you can. That's all I can say there. I know it's hard, but we're going to get out of here tonight, y'all. Thanks for sticking with us for a little bit of a longer episode. And look, I say it every episode, but when you hang out with us, you give us the most valuable thing you have, which is your time. Never underappreciated. So thank you for giving us your time tonight. We appreciate spending our time with you. It's one of the highlights of our week. Yeah. So, Alex, any parting shots before we get out of here tonight?
No, I mean, it was a little bit longer show, as you mentioned, but I thought it was a really good one. We had a lot of basketball talk to start with, and then we'll get in more to that. But then also, it's always fun to get into that betting segment with Justin.
Yeah, absolutely. And y'all, I got to let Alex go. He's probably got his Moe's order coming in. Was it Sunday or Wednesdays you do Moe's?
Sundays. But now you got me wanting Moe's. I may have to change that.
Well, y'all, we appreciate you as always. And we'll see you. We'll see you Sunday night with bells on. Alex and I will be here. So thank you again for joining us, and we will talk to you soon. Have a good one.